Hi, and welcome to the special edition of the Crafty Crocheteer for the Tunisian Crochet Summit. In today's episode, I'm going to be going over the different types of shawl shapes that we have and how increases and decreases in certain areas can achieve those shapes. I'm also going to be talking to you about the Starburst Shawl. This shawl is specifically designed to be easy to follow and beginner friendly. So to begin, I'm going to go over some of my own shawls and show you how their shapes vary. First up is the Solutions Shawlette. This is one of my favorite makes and probably one of my most worn. This is a great pattern because it's really beginner friendly and it's easy because you're only making increases along one side here. Those increases turn this into an asymmetrical shawl pattern, just like that. But when you turn it around and you wear the long edge forward, you get a beautiful shawl with incredible drape. Next up is the Rosetta Shawl. Now this is a perfect example of a triangle shawl that's made with increases in 3 different areas. So for this triangle shawl, you actually will make an increase in the center and then an increase along each of the edges as well. And that's what's going to give it this really nice fanned out shape with beautiful wings. Here we have the Find the Path shawl. Now the Find the Path shawl starts at the bottom here and works by making increases along both sides here. So you get a nice triangle shape the way you do with the Rosetta shawl, but you actually are working from the bottom up instead of from top down. And also this gives you a nice triangle shape that is completely symmetrical. This is the Charisma Shawl, and the Charisma Shawl is a little bit different than a triangle shape. It's actually a crescent or a semi-lunar shape. This shawl is made from right side to left side with increases going gradually across the bottom and over to the side. Now, this is a really popular shawl shape, and one of my favorite shawls out there is the Luna Shawl by Detroit Knots. That's also a semi-lunar shawl, but that's going to start up top and you're going to be working in increases. Another very popular shawl design is the Boomerang Shawl. The Boomerang Shawl works by doing 2 increases on one side and a decrease on the other. That gives a really nice curved wing. Now I use this in my coalescing shawl, but put a little bit of a spin on it to give you a little bit of a different variation, but you still have those great wings that the Boomerang Shawl gives you. Now there are quite a few other types of shawl shapes out there, the kite shawl and wraps being 2 of my other favorites. And there's really no limit. It just depends on where and if you choose to put your increases and decreases. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is move to the tutorial for the Starburst Shawl. So for this pattern, you'll need 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn and a 5mm Tunisian crochet hook with a cable and a stopper. So for my yarn, I'm using a variegated yarn and a tonal that go together, and you want it to be kind of a low contrast variegate that you're using. Something with speckles or too many different colors will hide the texture of the pattern. I'm going to cake this up because we're actually going to start with this one, and then I'll meet you back. So to begin this pattern, I'm going to go ahead and take the variegated color, and we'll call this color 1, and I'm going to do a basic slip knot. So what I've done is I've taken my finger and I have gone around twice. Then I'm going to take the back loop, bring it over, and then take the front loop, which is not a back loop, and slip it all the way over my finger. And just like that, you're going to have a slip knot. So next, I'm going to go ahead and chain 2, 1 and 2, and then I'm going to turn my work over and working in the back bumps and in the first loop from the hook. I'm going to go ahead and pick up a loop. So that's 1, and pull that nice and taut, and 2, nice and taut. Now I have 3 loops on my hook. So I'm going to go ahead and yarn over, pull through 1, pull through 2, pull through 2, just like that. And then now I have, and it's a little bit hard to see, but I have 3 stitches. In the middle stitch here, this is where I'm going to do my increase for row 2. I'm going to go ahead and do a knit stitch in that stitch, and then do a simple stitch in the same stitch, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick up a stitch in the last Tunisian stitch, and now I'll have 4 loops on my hook. I'm going to go ahead and do my standard return pass. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm going to basically do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and in this first stitch, I'm going to do a simple stitch, and then a knit stitch, and then I'm going to, in this stitch, when there's 2 stitches left, I'm always going to do a knit stitch and a last Tunisian stitch. So with my stitches, the first stitch is on the hook, the second stitch is my increase. Then I'm going to follow a pattern for all the stitches in between until my last 2 stitches. My second to last stitch will be a knit stitch for this part of the pattern, and then I'll do my last Tunisian. Now I'm going to start working in my color changes. So I have now 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to bring in our other color. Let me get this ready. So now we have color 2. So I'm going to go ahead and when I have 2 loops on my hook, I'm going to go ahead and just pull through. Oops, just like that. And then we'll pull that nice and tight. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do my increase. Just keep this over here. And then, so knit, simple. Then I'm going to do just a simple stitch here. And then I'm going to do my knit because I have 2 stitches left. And my last Tunisian stitch. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my return pass. Just like that. I'm going to do a couple more rows, and then I'm going to meet you and show you the next step. So I'm back. I have done 2 rows of the pattern repeat in color 2, which is our solid, and then I went back and did another row of color 1. And now we're going to add in another little feature. So I'm going to do my increase as always, and then I'm going to take a look at my stitches. So I know I have my last stitch, and then I have the knit stitch that's right before that, and then I have 1, 2, 3 Tunisian simple stitches that I'm going to do. But this stitch right in front is also going to be a knit stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and do a knit stitch, just like that, and make these nice and tight so I have a nice clean edge. Do my 3 simples, 1, 2, 3, and then go back to a knit stitch and the last Tunisian stitch. So what we're doing here is a little bit unusual. We're kind of doing the pattern. So what we're doing here is a little bit unusual. We're actually counting stitches from the back to help us determine what's going to go here. So from the back, we'll have a knit stitch, then we'll have 3 simple stitches, then we'll have a knit stitch again. And then as we do the increases here, we'll continue to collect stitches. So the pattern repeat when we move from this way is always going to make sure that we end up with a knit stitch here in our repeat. So I will do a couple more rows with you. So this is my second row of color 2 or color 1, and for color 1 there's always 3 rows in this section. So I have 1 more, so I'm going to go ahead and do my increase just like that. Then I know I have my knit stitch here, so this is just going to be a simple stitch, and then we'll do the knit. We'll do 3 simples, 1, 2, 3, then we have our knit, and then we have our simple. All right, we're going to do our return pass, and then because this is our 3rd row of color 1, we're going to change to color 2 when we get to 2 stitches left on the hook. So I'm going to go ahead and drop color 1, just tuck that in behind, and bring color 2 forward. And You will see as you're working this that you'll get a little bit of the carrying of colors, but that's on the back side of the shawl, so it shouldn't impact us at all. Then we're going to do our increase here, just like that. So knit and simple in the same stitch. Here's my knit stitch row. I only have 2 stitches before it, so I'm going to go ahead and do 2 simples, then do my knit, and then 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to do another knit, and then my last. So you can kind of see what we're doing is we're building these columns of knit stitches, but we want them to be aligned with our left hand side. And as you're working this pattern, just keep in mind you'll be always doing your increases on the right side, as well as your color changes for this part on the right side. So I'm going to keep working. I'm going to do my return pass in color 2, and then another row in color 2. Then I'll change colors and do 3 rows in color 1, and then I'll keep going building my shawl. Let me work on this a little bit more, then I'll come back and meet you. So the next step of this pattern is to add in these little starbursts. You can see this is the normal part, and we've been working it up with just that same repeat of 3 Tunisian simple and Tunisian knit stitch. And then I added in these little starbursts here, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. So when we're looking at our pattern, a couple of tips to talk to you about too is I can see that I have my knit stitch row here, 1, 2, 3. This is a knit stitch row, which makes, let me just do this last return pass, which makes this next one an increase. Sometimes you'll see here there's a stitch that's hidden, so make sure you pay attention to those stitches, especially once I do my increase, my knit stitch and my simple stitch, that stitch can get hidden, so make sure you don't forget that that stitch is there. So that stitch is just going to be a normal simple stitch, followed by, we're going to do a knit stitch because this is our knit stitch row, and then we have our 3 simple stitches. What we're going to do is we're going to yarn over, we're going to Tunisian simple stitch 3 together, just like that, pull through, yarn over again, and then go directly into our knit stitch. Let me do a couple more with you. Yarn over, simple stitch 3 together, so I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, yarn over again, and then knit. Those yarn overs are going to keep our stitch count the same, so it's really important to remember those. So yarn over, simple stitch 3 together, yarn over, and then into a knit stitch. So I'm going to finish this row, do my return pass, and when you do your return pass, just do it as normal, but make sure you get those yarn overs, and then I'll show you how we're going to do the next row for this. The other thing to note for this also is we always are going to do these starbursts, at least for this portion of the shawl, on the 3rd row of our variegated color or color 1, whichever one you want to call it. So I'm going to go ahead, finish this up on this return pass because this is the 3rd row. I'm going to go ahead and change to color 1 to our solid, and I'm sorry, to color 2 as our solid, and I will meet you back and show you how we're going to pick up this row of stitches. So I'm just switching to color 2, and then we're going to do our increase like normal, and then we're going to look at our pattern. So we have 2 simples before our knit, and then we get to our little starbursts, and I'm going to get this one out of the way. So I'm going to pick up this simple, then I'm going to do this simple, and then I'm going to pick up the yarn over as a simple again, just like that, and then I'll go into my knit stitch, and let me show you, let me get a tapestry needle and show you. So here is the one that brings them all together. Hidden right behind that is your yarn over, and then here's your other yarn over here. Now it's going to be tempting to go into the space in between here. Do not do that. If you go into that space, you're going to create a different pattern than the kind of more subtle starburst that we're looking for. So here what we're going to do, we're going to pick up that yarn over, do a simple stitch, and then pick up the next yarn overs for simple. So knit stitch, Then we're going to find that yarn over and simple it. Then we're going to do a simple stitch in the one that brings them all together. And then we're going to do another simple stitch in that yarn over and then into our knit, just like that. And what you can see is that's going to give us kind of more of a full pattern as opposed to holes. So I'm going to keep working on this, and then I'll meet you back to show you the next section of the shawl. So I'm going to catch you up on where we are at for this shawl. So I have my original part of the shawl that was just the section without the little starbursts in there. That is the Tunisian knit stitch and simple stitch. Then we added the Tunisian simple stitch 3 together that you can see here. And now we're getting to the end border. So I did 15 repeats of each section. And then when I got to here, I'm starting to do this next stitch, which is the known as the lattice stitch, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. Now there's quite a bit of yarn left. I'm going to probably do several inches of this, but you do have the ability to add more repeats of the starburst section and for this, but I'm happy with the way my shawl is now. So to do this, let me go ahead and bring this part over here. So now I'm going to show you how to do this lattice stitch. It's a really beautiful stitch and it's actually very simple. As always though, first we're going to do our increase, so our knit stitch and then our simple stitch together, just like that. Then I'm going to find my next 2 stitches and you can see they're right there. I'm going to go ahead and Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, just like that. Then I'm going to go back to this first stitch and go ahead and simple stitch right in there. Then I'm going to just continue that pattern. So I'm going to Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, then go back to the first stitch and just simple stitch. And that way you're never really decreasing stitches even though you're doing the 2 together. So again, 2 together, and then go ahead and do the 1 simple stitch on the first stitch. Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, and then 1 like this. So now, depending on the row that you're on, when you get to the end, you may end up, if it's depending on if you have an odd number or even number of stitches, you may end up having to do just a Tunisian simple stitch 2 together and then go back and do the first stitch, or you may have just 1 standing stitch by itself. If you have a standing stitch by itself, you're just going to go ahead and do a simple stitch in that and then continue the pattern. So every other row you'll have at the end a simple stitch by itself, and that is perfectly normal. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working on this, and then I'm going to come back and show you how we're going to do our bind off row. So for the final part of our shawl, we're going to go ahead and just do a simple stitch bind off. So it's really pretty straightforward. We're going to go in like we would for a simple stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop through the loop on the hook. Again, simple stitch, you're pulling up a loop, pull that loop through the loop in the stitch. And we're going to do this in a kind of a nice relaxed fashion. You don't want to do it too tight so that when we block it out, there's enough give in the edge to not cause it to buckle. So I'm going to keep doing my bind off. When I get to the end, I'll do a last Tunisian and fasten off. And then I'm going to go ahead, block my shawl, and I'll come back and show you what the finished product looks like. In the opening video, you saw what the final product of the Starburst shawl looked like, but I wanted to give you some close-up details, especially now that the shawl's been blocked. So here you can see the Tunisian simple stitch and just knit stitch repeats, creating those columns. Then as we move forward, we added in that little lovely starburst area. And even though we worked these as a simple stitch, you can see how it really just opened up in a lovely way, but at the same time, we've maintained our columns throughout. So as we continued working those starbursts, then we finally got to our lattice stitch area. And the lattice stitch also bloomed wonderfully once it was blocked. So here's the final pattern. If you saw this as part of the Tunisian Crochet Summit, I really hope you enjoyed this whole weekend with us. For more video tutorials, please check out my YouTube channel. I have tons of patterns also on Ravelry, which I hope you'll enjoy. Thank you, and happy crocheting.